bigger is better. Bigger aquarium makes it easier to balance, all of that. And now I'm not so sure. I think there's a sweet spot, and I actually think that we were wrong and I was wrong. What if we had made a different choice at the beginning? What if we had advised people to go smaller? Hey everybody, Cory from Aquariumcoop.com, our retail store and our retail partner store is coming at you. Today I want to talk about aquarium size and mostly about making our tanks smaller. I definitely have been guilty of this. I think the internet is guilty of this, and as I've been in this career for, like 20 years now, I feel like it's time to talk about it more and fess up, if you will, from learning. So I think when we go online, mostly the rhetoric is bigger is better, more filtration's better, can't go wrong with more. And I believe that, and I bought into that for a long time. You might have heard me that, well, more filtration's not necessarily better. And, cichlid tanks are running a few FX6 filters and all that. It tends to be very overkill, and I learned that over the years. Well, what I've been learning in my world travels, I would say, is that I'm not convinced bigger aquariums are better. Even when it comes to moderately sized fish. And what's a moderately sized fish? I don't know, 6, 8, 10 inches, somewhere in there. I think I myself started the hobby with very large aquariums because I liked monster fish, really big fish like Mabu puffers and giraffe catfish. And these monsters get like 3 feet long, right? And so bigger was always better because I needed bigger space for these big animals, right? And it never served me wrong. So that's what I will say is I don't think inherently having too big of an aquarium is a problem. To me, it's kind of like having a car that can do 200 miles per hour. Yes, I'm only going to drive at 70, maybe 80, but the capability is there if I ever needed it. Even though I'll never use it, it doesn't directly hurt me, right? If that car was given to you and you just drove it to work and back, it would be fine, right? But when it comes to buying it, well, you're going to spend a lot more money on a car that can go 200 miles per hour, even though you're not going to use it that way. Same thing in an aquarium. If you buy too big of an aquarium and you're not utilizing it, it's actually just a waste of money. And I do believe it changes our hobby. And so some of the ways I think it changes it, well, let's say you want to keep a community aquarium, right? Just fish on average that are 2 inches roughly. And you want a bunch of those, and you want a showpiece in your house, and you want to look at it and enjoy it and do that stuff, right? Well, you could buy a 55-gallon aquarium or a 75-gallon aquarium, or what about like a 29-gallon aquarium? What I find is people get nearly the same enjoyment, spend the same amount of time enjoying it, but not the same amount of maintenance. And so some of this might be maybe even closer to TVs. When you're on an airplane, you'll take a screen this big and it's amazing, right? When you're at a theater, it needs to be huge. I paid for this. And at home, you probably have different sized TVs in different rooms. Maybe the main living room has the biggest one. Maybe you've got a small one in the bedroom. Maybe you have a tiny one in your bathroom. Now we've pretty much replaced them with phones and stuff, but maybe there's a smaller one in a kid's bedroom. Maybe there's one in the exercise room, right? Different sizes, but the reality is mostly the same enjoyment out of all of them, right? Different prices, but TVs don't have upkeep. Aquariums do. So when we're looking at an aquarium, and I definitely am suffering from this so hard, the bigger the aquarium, the longer it takes to clean. Now, the counterpoint to that is, in theory, the bigger the aquarium, the less cleaning would be needed, and the easier it is to balance, and the easier it is to take care of fish. That can be true. However, it also usually leads to more expense. Let's take the 55-gallon versus a 29-gallon example. Just buying like the substrate, right? You're going to need more substrate to fill that tank, right? You probably need a little bit bigger of a filter, maybe, unless you're using like a sponge filter like we sell, and then it's kind of the same either way. And even at most, you're looking at a couple $1 difference. Then you need plants, right? And so you can get away with a lot fewer plants in a smaller aquarium for it to look, ooh, that looks good, right? If you got a giant yard at your house and you put 3 plants in it, it looks like you haven't done anything. If you've got a tiny little apartment balcony and you put 3 plants, like, wow, yeah, you got a planted balcony. It's looking pretty good, right? So we run into that thing where, okay, well, I need to buy, if we want to plant basically every 4 inches or so like this section right here in an aquarium, the bigger the aquarium, the more plants that is. So you might be looking at, a 4-foot long tank, 48 inches. You're going to put, 12 in there? And then you need to go front to back. So you might be anywhere between 24 and 36 potted plants. Let's just even it out and say it's, $10. So you're almost up to $360. We're a 29-gallon tank just in the plants. You're going, okay, well, it's only 30 inches long, right? So you go 7 plants wide and 2 front to back, basically, maybe 3. But you're looking at 14 to 21 plants. So at least 1/3 of a savings just in plants right there. Then you go into fertilizers. You're using a little more than half. You're going to save money on each step, dechlorinator, all of that, right? When it comes to buying fish, you will be limited. You can't keep as many fish, or the choices do get limited a bit more, right? In general, the loose rule of thumb, which I'm sure 10 years from now I'll be going, wow, why did we follow these rules? But the loose rule of thumb is, in a perfect world, the tank is 10 times as long as the fish. So if you have a 2-inch fish, you have a 20-inch aquarium, good enough, right? And we can all play devil's advocate, and there's always going to be the fish police, like, I think it should be 100 times, 10,000 times, 10 worlds, 10 galaxies is big, right? But in general, we find these loose rules help guide new people and make it easier to compute this with our brains. So we have, maybe some live some tetras, and we got our plants and all that. We can be enjoying that in 29. I still think we get the same enjoyment out of fish shopping. That's one of the funnest parts. The going out experience, maybe you get lunch, maybe meet with a friend, maybe you go with a spouse, right? All that still exists. You're still going to do whatever it is your maintenance schedule is. Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it every 3 months? Is it every 2 weeks? You're still going to interact with your aquariums that way. Maybe you're watching Aquariumcoop videos. You're still going to do that every week. So all of those enjoyment things kind of still stay the same. Most people that are watching our channel are keeping community aquariums. And not as often are they limited by, ooh, that's a very big animal I want to keep, and I don't have a big enough aquarium. It's mostly the quantity of them. And so, yes, you wouldn't be able to keep quite as many. However, this is kind of the bigger thing I've been learning is rarely are we actually limited by the space in the aquarium. Most people that I'm seeing, they're limited by either a lack of knowledge or a care level, right? And so if we go back to that 55-gallon aquarium, let's say it takes you, let's pick a number, 30 minutes or an hour once. Let's say it's an hour with water change and everything. 1 hour a week to do the maintenance on that aquarium, right? And if that's your only aquarium, not so bad. People can do it and it can look great. But we in America have multiple tank syndrome, and that might be your 7th aquarium. And now you're looking at, well, it's taking me like 6 hours on a Sunday, right? Or whatever day you're doing it. That's, I believe, where the problem starts coming in. Every time you're on vacation, every time you get sick, every time you go, well, I'll do it next week, we're just kind of falling behind. And it's harder to kind of do an extra cleaning because it still takes an hour. And so if we're at an hour on a 55-gallon tank and we're at, let's just say, 30 minutes on a 30-gallon tank, right? That 29-gallon tank. And it's not always linear like that. It might be like 40 minutes, setting up the hose, for instance, whether it's a big tank or a small tank, takes the same amount of time. Now it's half as much time. And with those 7 aquariums, maybe now it only takes 3 hours, and maybe you're less likely to miss it, and you can make it up a little more often, right? So I think that goes a long way into the health of the animal. When we look at bigger is always better, I don't think we see the other side of the equation. When a new person enters the hobby, we go bigger, 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 bigger. We also say more water changes, more water changes, more water changes, but really there's nobody following up on that. Like once you're in the hobby for a little while, you get lazy, you get complacent, you go, they're doing good, I'm sick, thing came up. And I don't think we have enough people, and that's why I'm doing it, talking about what if we had made a different choice at the beginning? What if we had advised people to go smaller? Well, everything's going to die, but will it though? Will it? Because there's a lot of countries around the world that do go smaller, and I would argue their tanks might even be better for it. And so, something here I have like this nano tank. This is a pretty small nano tank. I wouldn't recommend this to necessarily just anybody, but it'd be a great shrimp tank. It'd be a great Endler lion bear tank. It'd be a great snail tank, maybe, a pea puffer in there, maybe, it would be enough to be on a desk office and be fun, right? I'm talking more about somewhere between like 8 and 14, 15 gallons, somewhere in there. Something that you can easily, comfortably carry. I think that's the zone I'm talking about. What I saw at Chris Lukup's house, the Shrimp King, and I've seen at other people's houses I've been able to visit, and they create these wonderful aquariums in these small tanks. Now, we're not just talking about aquascaping, because there is that too. We're talking about just overall enjoyment. And what I saw at Chris Lukup's house, and if you haven't checked out his channel, you should, because I think it's really it was a revelation in fish keeping for me. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have. And sometimes that's where you find your best tips. When you visit someone, they've been doing it forever, and they've got all the resources in the world. He can get any fish he wants. He can go collect it. He can get any aquarium. He can get any sponsor he wants. And this is what you're doing, huh? Right? And so he had, like, there's 7-gallon aquariums, and I believe he had 6 of them. And so I stayed with Chris for 2 weeks, and so he had to do his maintenance. And I'd watch him do it, and there was no schedule to it. That right there was, oh, how can you live this way for me? No schedule to it. Instead, he'd be like, oh, well, yeah, we got about 30 minutes before we're going to do something. And then he would do his maintenance. And I was like, you're going to do your maintenance in 30 minutes? How? And his way of doing it was so relaxing and just cool. What he used a water, like a plant canteen watering. Why can't I think of the name of this? This is why I don't film videos. A watering can, right? He would take like a 2 to 3 gallon watering can and a piece of hose, like a 3-foot piece of hose. And he would just get the water started into the watering can and get any loose debris and just do some cleaning and all of that. And he would do like a 50% water change, and it would take to drain that water like 2-3 minutes. Just seeing it played out at scale and with really nice looking aquariums, I was like, this is the dream. So you're telling me you're going to drain all 7 aquariums in like 20 minutes, and each time you take that watering canteen and he would go water plants around his house. He'd be like, oh, and then outside and this and this and this. And then he would just go to the sink. He'd fill it back up with water, easily portable. Just, oh, let me turn it on. He'd be talking to you. Maybe he's making a snack, whatever he's doing, just like real normal life stuff instead of, I got to clean my aquarium mode. And then he'd go, okay, it's full. And he would go back upstairs, like a room like this. So I'm upstairs. He would literally walk up the stairs and he'd just pour it in. And, a lot of them, he wasn't doing necessarily 50% water changes. It was like 2 or 3 gallons. So he could kind of like, oh, I'll top this one off. Okay, and this one, I'll put some in, go get some more water. And he was able to, with the talking and everything, it actually ended up being like 45 minutes. And he didn't have to do it all at once. And it was very interesting to see a different type of fish keeping done that way, which I know some of you guys like me are already doing that, where you're like, yeah, we reuse our water and we do this. But the fact that his water change day was more like a water change hour. And he would do it basically while waiting for something. If he's on hold with the bank, if he's waiting for an email at work, like whatever it was, like, he hit the upload button at YouTube, where I know my hobby is, well, tomorrow's Saturday or Sunday, I'm going to spend all day in there cleaning. And that changes the hobby. I would argue I spend more time maintaining than I do enjoying at this point. Now, yes, it is my work and it's my business and all of that. But even before I did this as a profession, I got to a point where lots and lots and lots of big aquariums. Now, one of the faults I think we fall into is, well, I want to do like at least like a 10, 20, 30% water change. Well, 10, 20, 30% on this is a couple of scoops of water. On a 100-gallon aquarium that's your pride and joy, that's 20 or 30 gallons of water. That just takes more time. And if you're like me and you live in a normal house, you can even run out of hot water. Maybe your wife wants to do the dishes or wash some clothes, and you're trying to do water changes, and now you run out of hot water. It becomes a whole ordeal for a whole day. You're telling people, hey, don't take a shower. Hey, don't do this. I need all the hot water for the next 3 hours. Right? And that's where I think if we were more upfront and say, actually, I think for the average person, a smaller aquarium is better. It's easier to maintain. If you have let's just call it a 10-gallon aquarium. It doesn't have to be the standard 10-gallon. It can look cool. It can be rimless. It can be in a different shape. It doesn't matter. But 10 gallons of water is actually quite a bit of water. For some reason, when we look, and I have this dysmorphia. When I look at a 10-gallon aquarium, I go, that's tiny. When I look at 2 5-gallon Home Depot buckets, I go, that's a lot of water. If you ever wonder how much water it is, take a 5-gallon bucket, dump it on your floor. You've never seen so much water in your life when you're mopping it up. Like, this is never ending. It's plenty, and especially If we make it a 20 to 30% water change, is 2 or 3 gallons of water. You can use a pitcher, 1, 2, 3, and then you fill that back up, and you've done your maintenance in there, and maybe you scrubbed a little bit of algae in 10 minutes. The average person is much more likely to do that more often. Maybe you do that every week, and your tank is sparkling, looking great every single week. Where that 100-gallon aquarium, life's been busy, you're working overtime, Christmas is coming up, it's Junior's birthday, and you're just getting to it at the end of the month. And so I think the big difference for me is, in my fish room, I'm currently chasing what has happened. Where I think in smaller aquariums, you're preventing what's going to happen. Like, I just know, oh, if 5 minutes I can make this thing worlds better, I would do that. Where the 800-gallon that I own, like if I want to do a big clean on that, I'm like, well, that's a whole day. And I might even need a partner to do this. Like, that includes getting inside. That includes just 400 gallons of water. If your hot water heater only holds 80 gallons, you get to about 200, 250 before it runs cold. You gotta let that heat back up for an hour or two. Then you can finish filling it. I've got multiple big canister filters, gravel vacuuming. You can't reach the bottom, so you're kind of inside of it to do it. I've got all these challenges. Now you're going, well, I don't have a tank that big. I know you don't. Well, you probably don't. But you probably do have multiple tanks. You probably do have tanks that are bigger than you need. And I'm running into this so much out there. I love live bears. I love little fish. And that's what I do. And I have these 40-gallon aquariums essentially. And I'm like, I'm going to put 3 little fish in there. And then after a year, there'll be 100 little fish in there. And it's still way too big. Like I never once, well, I shouldn't say never once, but I can't recall a time in the last 15 years of my hobby that I have run into too many fish for my aquarium issue, because I've always led with it, just go bigger, right? I never ran into water quality problems. I never, because I do the water changes and that kind of stuff. I've never run into it. I have run into lack of motivation to clean them. I have run into just not having enough time. I've run into all those. And so if we're truly trying to optimize enjoying the hobby, which I think we should, I do enjoy maintenance, by the way. I love cleaning a sponge filter. So satisfying. Gravel vacuuming and watching the poop come out. Oh, yes, great. It's like vacuuming something that was dirty. You're like, oh, it's so clean now. I love that, right? But I don't necessarily love 8 hours of it. I don't love it when someone stops by the fish room like, ooh, and I'm feeling like, oh, they look a little dirty. Like, oh. So I know that I could create a better hobby for myself by either downsizing. So a lot of us run into burnout. I think this is why burnout comes. And then also, I think I don't need 40 gallons. A lot of these fish would have been fine in 20 gallons. And if that halves my maintenance time, right? And I think I've been focusing on maintenance, but I'm not sure that's the key either. Because making something less painful is good. As in, if we don't like doing all the maintenance, that is good. But we're not seeing the flip side of the coin of it would also look better, right? So if you were spending 10 hours, right, to clean all your aquariums, that's extreme, but let's say it's 5 hours. You got 5 hours and you clean all your aquariums and they're just like, okay, they get a passing grade. If you now could make it so it only took 2.5 hours to get that passing grade, you're more likely to go, well, I'm going to go the extra mile today. I'm going to go for 3 hours, an extra 30 minutes, and these 2 aquariums, they look better than they've ever looked. I trimmed, I experimented, I did this, I swapped the lights, I did this. So I think you actually will get to a better hobby that way and a better enjoyment. And so that's what I hope to focus on. I'm going to be working with some more smaller nano tanks because there's so many species of fish in the world, and I want to enjoy them. And, just use one more analogy. If I want to go on a walk with a pet, right? If I want to take my dog for a walk, honestly, I can do that with my Chihuahuas or I can do it with a Great Dane. I'll get the same enjoyment out of it. But when it comes time to clean up the yard because they've gone potty, Great Dane, big poop. Chihuahua, small poop. Takes less time, less ways to get rid of and all of that. And so I already know that in some of my hobbies of my dogs. Smaller dogs, easier, right? Meds are cheaper, food is cheaper, grooming is cheaper, all the things, all the I'm going to say the negative parts of the ownership of that are easier with a smaller dog. Now, there are people like me that, I have to have a Great Dane. And when other people have a Great Dane, do I love all over it? Yes, I do. Great Danes are amazing. Just like people might enjoy seeing Mabu puffers that I keep. And I think they are worth it. However, most of my hobby are the Chihuahuas and the little fish and that kind of stuff because I get so much enjoyment and bewilderment and wow, look what it's doing and this out of it. And I think most of you guys and gals do as well. You enjoy just seeing what nature's got to offer. You enjoy keeping it. I enjoy keeping the ecosystem. I like it to look good. I like friends and family to look in and go, wow, look at this little neat thing. And all of that is a total package for me. And yes, I'm not saying don't do maintenance. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying let's optimize for enjoyment. And I think a lot of times that could be smaller aquariums based on your time being spent will go so much further on each aquarium and not waiting on water, waiting on things, spending your money disproportionately. You know, when it comes if the fish get sick and you got to use meds, 10-gallon aquarium, 20-gallon aquarium, very cheap to medicate. You start getting to 55, 100 gallons. Now it's 10x the cost, right? And a lot of people, we are limited by cost. Everyone's got a budget for your hobby. And if you're spending it on meds and gravel and this, you're not spending it on fish or maybe a trip to go collect in the wild or visit them in the wild or whatever it's going to be. Everybody's got a certain amount of time and money that they get to budget towards any one hobby because you guys are complex. You've got multiple hobbies. You're gaming, you're playing sports, you're doing this, you're doing that. You've got cars, you've got this. And so it's all not risk versus reward, but time in versus enjoyment out. And I'm hoping that this has helped you reframe your mindset to go, yeah, maybe what I'm looking at over here, my shrimp tank didn't need to be a 20 long. Maybe it could have been a 10-gallon just fine. It probably could have. I would have saved money. I'd have more space. It would take less time. And it's sitting on my desk, and I would look at it the same amount. You know, I don't need the big screen TV in every room. I can deal with a normal size TV and still enjoy the show. So hopefully that reframed your thinking. You'll think about it a little bit. Leave a comment down below and how your hobby has changed over the years and what you've kind of learned. And not so much, you know, are the fish police wrong? I want your opinions. Like, what have you come to terms with? And don't be afraid to admit you're wrong. I'm wrong all the time. And what, you know, I go out of my way to learn over the years. And I know you could probably find it 50 times in a video. Bigger is better. Bigger aquarium makes it easier to balance, all of that. And now I'm not so sure. And I actually think that we were wrong and I was wrong. And I think there's a sweet spot. I also don't think 1-gallon aquariums is going to be way easier. I also don't think 1,000-gallon aquariums is going to be easier. I think there's a sweet spot. And from working in a store a long time, I saw that was 29-gallon aquariums would keep a family content for a very, very long time. They didn't feel like they had to get bigger. Or like a 20-gallon, sometimes they did. But for us, the average person watching this, we know we've told you have 7 aquariums. And so you don't need 7 29-gallon tanks. You could definitely have a mix of 10s and 15s and 20s and a 29 and a 5-gallon over there and really just match the animal you want to keep and the enjoyment you're looking for in the part of your house you're looking for to that. Especially if you got houseplants, go and water them, do small water changes, you'll enjoy it. So we'll see you around. Thanks for hanging out with me today and enjoy nature daily.